Aquarius. There's someone who hasn't been sleeping well lately. Not because of chaos in their life, but because your energy keeps showing up in their thoughts, uninvited. This isn't gentle nostalgia, this is overthinking. Circling the same memories, replaying moments they thought were already buried. And the truth is, you didn't chase them. You didn't demand answers. You simply stayed authentic, and that quietly triggered feelings they worked very hard to suppress. If you felt an unexplained pull lately, a sense that someone is mentally reaching for you, leave a crescent moon in the comments and receive the message meant for you. Because what's coming next isn't about chasing love, it's about understanding why your presence changed something inside them and why this story is far from over. Let's begin. Aquarius, let's slow this moment down together. Because what's happening now isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly in the spaces between thoughts. You may have noticed it without proof. A subtle shift in the air, a sudden memory that doesn't belong to you, yet somehow finds its way back. That's intuition speaking in your language. You see, when someone truly feels unsettled by your presence, it doesn't show up as longing first. It shows up as mental noise, restlessness, the inability to fully relax when your name drifts across their mind. They try to stay logical about it. They remind themselves of distance, of timing, of reasons why they moved on. And yet your energy keeps returning, not as a fantasy, but as a question they never answered. Aquarius, your power has always been this quiet clarity. You don't force emotions. You don't chase reactions. You simply live in your truth, and that alone exposes what others try to hide from themselves. This is why they feel unsettled. Not because you demanded anything, but because you reflected something they weren't ready to face. For someone over 35, this kind of emotional trigger hits differently. It isn't dramatic. It's introspective. It makes them pause midday and wonder where one presence still carries weight after so much time. Have you ever noticed how some connections don't fade? They just change their shape. That's what this is. You represent a version of themselves they didn't fully step into, a truth they postponed, a feeling they labeled as inconvenient. And now their mind keeps returning to the same place, trying to understand what was never processed. Aquarius, there's nothing you need to do here. No message to send. No move to make. Your role isn't action. It's awareness. Because when you recognize your impact without attaching to it, you reclaim your emotional sovereignty. This moment isn't asking you to reopen a door. It's asking you to acknowledge your value without shrinking it for anyone else's comfort. Let me ask you something gently. Have you been sensing a shift lately, not toward them but toward yourself? A feeling that you've outgrown explanations. That clarity matters more than validation. That's not coincidence. As their thoughts spiral inward, yours are becoming steadier, grounded, clear. And this contrast matters more than you think, because the story unfolding here isn't about who thinks of whom. It's about why certain connections awaken growth long after silence sets in. Stay with me. There's more light ahead, and what you're about to understand may finally bring peace to a question you stopped asking out loud. Aquarius, stay with me for a moment. What's unfolding now lives mostly in silence. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that grows louder when the world finally goes quiet. Inside their mind, there's a steady hum. Thoughts that arrive without warning, usually late at night, when the distractions are gone and there's nowhere left to run. They're not afraid of you. That's not what keeps them awake. What unsettles them is how small moments with you have refused to stay small. A look that lingered half a second longer than expected. A conversation that ended too soon. A version of themselves that felt more honest around you than they planned to reveal. These memories surface when they're alone. Not dramatically, almost casually. And that's what makes them dangerous. Because they don't come with answers. They come with questions. What if I had spoken more clearly instead of hiding behind logic or timing or pride? What if I had been braver in a moment that mattered and didn't know it yet? This is the kind of overthinking that doesn't look like obsession. It looks like reflection. Like someone replaying a scene not to change the ending, but to understand why it still echoes. For someone past 35, this hits differently than it did years ago. They're not chasing excitement anymore. They're chasing coherence. They want to understand themselves. And somehow, you became part of that mirror. Your energy didn't disrupt their life. It highlighted something unresolved within it. That's why the thoughts appear at night. When the phone is face down. When the house is quiet. When there's no one left to perform for. In those moments, they don't miss you in a romantic sense. They miss the clarity they felt around you. The way something made sense without explanation. Aquarius, silence in this context is not distance. It's processing. It's the mind sorting through emotional files that were never properly labeled. Let me ask you something softly. Have you ever noticed how the most meaningful connections don't demand attention, yet they demand honesty? That's what this is doing to them. And here's the part that matters for you. You are not responsible for their conclusions. You don't need to reopen old doors or revisit old conversations to validate what they're feeling now. Your role is simply to recognize that your presence carried weight because it was real. This awareness isn't meant to pull you backward. It's meant to ground you in your worth. As they sit with unanswered questions, you're learning to sit with peace, with self-respect, with a deeper understanding of what you bring into a space without effort. And this shift changes the entire dynamic. Because when one person is looking back and the other is standing firmly in the present, something begins to realign. There's more clarity ahead, more insight waiting to surface once the noise settles even further. Stay here with me. What comes next reveals why this moment matters far more for you than it ever will for them. Aquarius, let me sit with you right here. There comes a moment when thinking quietly turns into something heavier. Not chaotic, not dramatic. Just a slow realization that what they felt was never temporary. Somewhere along the way, they made a private decision, not out loud, not even fully conscious at first. A decision to close a door before it opened too wide. And it had nothing to do with your value. It had everything to do with their timing, their history, the emotional weight they were already carrying when you appeared. They told themselves it was better this way, safer, more reasonable. They convinced themselves that admiration could stay contained, that curiosity could stay harmless, that connection could be appreciated from a distance without being entered. This is what adults learn to do when life has taught them caution. They don't deny feelings, they manage them. They place them in boxes with labels like not now, maybe later, not practical, too risky. They tell themselves they are being mature. But feelings that are real do not disappear. They wait. They resurface quietly in unexpected moments. While driving home with the radio low, while folding laundry, while staring at a ceiling they know too well, that is when the truth becomes uncomfortable. It is not that they didn't choose you. It is that they didn't choose vulnerability. They were afraid of what loving you might awaken. Old grief, unhealed disappointment, the version of themselves they worked hard to keep under control. You represented something alive, unscripted, uncontained. And for someone who has survived emotional loss before, that can feel dangerous. Aquarius, hear this carefully. When someone buries feelings, it is not because those feelings are weak. It is because they are powerful enough to disrupt a carefully balanced life. This is not about rejection. It is about self-protection. They were protecting a system that already felt fragile, protecting routines, protecting emotional equilibrium, protecting themselves from hoping again. And yet, buried emotions do not rest. They press upward. They ask to be acknowledged. That pressure is what you are sensing now. Not longing in the romantic sense, but reckoning. A quiet awareness that something meaningful was touched and never finished. That an honest connection was felt and deliberately interrupted. Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever noticed how the most transformative people in our lives are often the ones we never fully explore? You became a turning point without trying to be one. And here is where your healing begins. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to wait for clarity from them. You do not need to question what you did wrong, because you did nothing wrong. Your presence revealed a truth they were not prepared to carry at the time. That is not your burden. This awareness is not meant to pull you into their struggle. It is meant to free you from self-doubt. You are not too much. You were simply real in a world that had learned how to stay guarded. And as this truth continues to surface for them, another realization is forming quietly for you. That your role in this story was never to be diminished. It was to illuminate. Stay here with me. Because what comes next shifts the focus entirely back to you and shows why this connection changed you in ways you may not have named yet. Aquarius, there is a quiet shift that happens here. After all the unspoken weight they carried, after the effort it took to keep feelings contained, their attention begins to change direction, not outward, inward. They start to see you more clearly than before, not through longing, through perspective. They notice how you move through life without needing permission, how you make decisions without announcing them, how you've learned over time to stand comfortably in your own company. There is something steady about you, not loud confidence, not performance, just a calm sense of self that doesn't ask to be validated. And that's where the shift happens. They realize you are not waiting, not chasing, not arranging your life around potential. You are already living. You have a rhythm that doesn't depend on whether someone stays or goes. A world that keeps turning even when no one is watching. For someone who has spent years negotiating their worth through relationships, this is both beautiful and unsettling. They admire you more than they expected to. Not because you are distant, but because you are complete. You don't need them to feel okay. And that truth lands quietly but deeply. It challenges a belief they didn't know they were still carrying. That love is supposed to fill a gap. That connection is supposed to rescue something unfinished. But with you, there is no gap to fill, only space to meet. And that makes them pause. They begin to compare the version of themselves they offer the world with the standard your presence naturally sets. Not intentionally. It just happens. They see how you've learned from life instead of hardening against it. How experience has refined you rather than diminished you. How your independence is not defensive but earned. This is where admiration quietly turns into self-doubt. Not the dramatic kind. The reflective kind. They wonder if they would rise to you or ask you to come down. They wonder if they have done enough inner work to meet someone who knows who they are. And in moments of honesty, a thought passes through them like a soft ache. You deserve someone who doesn't hesitate. That thought is not self-pity, it's clarity. For an adult heart, clarity can be confronting. Because it removes excuses, it removes timing, it removes circumstance. It leaves only readiness. Aquarius. This is not about them placing you on a pedestal. It's about them recognizing your altitude. You didn't climb above them. You grew into yourself. And here is where your healing deepens. You are not intimidating. You are grounded. You are not unattainable. You are aligned. Anyone who feels smaller around you is not meant to be diminished by your light. They are being invited to rise. Let me ask you something softly. How often have you mistaken someone's hesitation for a reflection of your own worth? Because what they see in you now is not something you suddenly became. It's something you've been carrying quietly for years. Your lived experience, your emotional intelligence, your ability to stand alone without closing your heart. This recognition is not meant to inflate you. It is meant to anchor you. As they continue to look at you with new eyes, another truth is forming beneath the surface. Seeing your value is one thing, choosing to meet it is another. And that difference matters. Stay with me here. Because what follows reveals why their admiration alone is not enough, and why your next chapter asks for something deeper than being seen. Aquarius, this is where the energy grows quieter, but heavier. Because wanting something and being able to step toward it are two very different experiences. Inside them, there is movement, not forward. Inward. They pause not because desire is missing, but because memory is loud. There are moments from their past that rise up without invitation. Times when they acted too late, or left too early. Times when they convinced themselves they were making the right choice, only to realize much later that they had chosen safety over truth. Those memories don't accuse. They simply stand there, waiting to be acknowledged. And now, with you, those old patterns feel dangerously close to repeating. They are afraid of being seen in ways they once avoided. Not surface-level seen, but deeply understood. You have a way of looking at people that doesn't rush and doesn't flatter. It notices. That kind of attention feels tender and threatening. Because if you truly see them, you will also see where they are still unfinished. They worry about hurting you, yes. But they worry even more about disappointing themselves again. About stepping forward and realizing they still haven't learned the lesson life tried to teach them before. For someone who has lived long enough to regret choices, hesitation becomes a form of control. They tell themselves they are protecting you, but often they are protecting an identity they built after a past failure. An image of someone who is careful, measured, unshakable. You challenge that image without trying, and so they stand at the edge of action, feeling the pull and the resistance at the same time. This is not indifference. This is an inner negotiation. They ask themselves questions they once avoided. Am I ready to show up differently? Or will I retreat the moment things feel real? Let me ask you something gently, Aquarius. How often have you sensed someone wanted you, but did not want the responsibility that comes with meeting you fully? Because that is the tension here. They are not deciding whether they care. They are deciding whether they can be accountable to what they feel. And that decision cannot be rushed. Here is where your wisdom matters. Understanding does not mean waiting endlessly. Compassion does not mean minimizing your own needs. You can see their struggle without stepping into it. You can hold empathy without carrying their fear. This moment is not asking you to excuse their silence. It is asking you to release resentment from your body. To stop interpreting pause as rejection. Some battles are internal, and some journeys must be walked alone. They are facing themselves now. Not the version they present to others, but the one they meet when the lights are off and the house is still. That confrontation will either soften them or solidify their avoidance. And neither outcome is yours to control. What is yours is how you remain anchored. You don't need answers tonight. You don't need promises. You don't need movement to validate what you already know. Your calm is not passive, it is powerful. As they wrestle with fear and memory, you are learning something equally important. That love at this stage of life is not about urgency, it is about readiness. And soon, very soon, that truth will become impossible to ignore. Stay here with me, because the next shift is not about their hesitation anymore, but about the moment when silence itself begins to crack and reveal what can no longer be held back. Aquarius, there is a subtle change in the air now. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly, the way truth often does when it has waited long enough. After all the internal wrestling, after the long pauses and unspoken tension, something inside them loosens. Not because fear disappears, but because holding everything in becomes heavier than the risk of letting something out. There comes a moment when silence no longer feels protective. It starts to feel dishonest. That is when they shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, just enough to be unmistakable. It might be a message sent later than it should have been, written carefully, read and reread before being released into the world. It might be a sentence spoken softly, without explanation, without defense. Or it might be an action so small that anyone else would miss it. But you won't, because it carries a different energy. There is presence in it, intention, a quiet courage that wasn't there before. This is not them rushing toward you. This is them finally standing still long enough to speak from a place that feels honest. For someone who has lived through disappointment, this kind of movement takes effort. It means accepting that avoidance has run its course, that pretending indifference costs more than vulnerability, and so they choose truth in the smallest possible form. Aquarius, this is important. When it comes, it will not feel overwhelming. It will feel grounded. No promises, no declarations, just sincerity, and that is how you will know it matters. Because at this stage of life, real emotion doesn't perform. It reveals. Let me ask you something gently. When someone finally speaks after a long silence, do you listen only to the words, or do you feel the effort it took to say them? That effort is what makes this moment different. Not because it guarantees anything, but because it shows a shift in consciousness. They are no longer asking themselves whether they feel something. They are asking whether they can live with not expressing it. And that question changes behavior. Still hear me clearly, Aquarius. This moment is not meant to pull you into anticipation. It is not meant to put your life on hold. It is simply information. A signal that something real has reached the surface. You do not need to react immediately. You do not need to mirror their timing. You are allowed to observe. Your maturity allows you to receive without rushing, to acknowledge without surrendering your center. If they step forward, you will feel it not as relief, but as alignment. And if they hesitate again, you will feel that too, without losing yourself. That is your growth. This moment exists to remind you that you are no longer waiting for proof of your worth. You are evaluating consistency. You are listening not for intensity, but for integrity. Whatever arrives now, arrives because something inside them could no longer stay buried. And whatever you choose next will come from clarity, not longing. Stay with me a little longer, because what follows is not about what they do next, but about how you decide what kind of connection is worthy of the person you have become. Aquarius, this is where the light turns inward. After everything that has moved, everything that has softened and surfaced, there is a quiet invitation now not for them, but for you. Because at this stage of your life, waiting is no longer romantic. It is revealing. You have already learned how to hold space, how to understand silence, how to read what is not being said without losing your compassion. What you are learning now is how to remain steady without shrinking. If they step forward, you will feel it immediately. Not as excitement, but as coherence. Their words will carry weight. Their presence will feel consistent. Their actions will not ask you to explain yourself again. And you will notice something else. You will not rush toward them. You will observe. You will sense how much inner work they have done, not through promises, but through how they show up when things feel real. If they hesitate again, if timing stretches thin, if silence returns without clarity, that information will land differently now. Not as pain, as truth. It will not say anything about your desirability. It will say everything about their readiness. And that distinction is freedom. Aquarius, you were not meant to awaken something in someone only to abandon yourself in the process. You were not meant to become smaller so someone else could feel comfortable approaching you. Your growth has already cost you enough. It does not require further sacrifice. There is a strength in staying rooted that is often misunderstood. You are not cold. You are centered. You are not distant. You are discerning. At this point in your journey, love is not about potential. It is about capacity. Can someone meet you where you are, without asking you to dim your awareness or soften your boundaries? Can they hold your independence without trying to compete with it or tame it? These are adult questions. quiet questions. But they shape entire futures. Let me ask you something softly. When you imagine being chosen now, do you imagine feeling anxious or do you imagine feeling calm? Because your body already knows what alignment feels like. You no longer chase reassurance. You recognize resonance. And that is why you do not need to wait. You stay open, but you do not pause your becoming. You allow connection, but you do not outsource your sense of worth. You understand that timing is not an excuse, and silence is not a promise. This does not make you guarded, it makes you wise. If they arrive ready, you will know how to meet them without losing yourself. If they do not, you will know how to keep walking without bitterness. That is power. Not the loud kind. The lasting kind. This moment is asking you to trust your evolution, to honor how far you have come, to choose alignment over anticipation. Whatever unfolds next will unfold around the person you already are, not the version of you that waits to be chosen. Stay here with me, because what remains is the most important realization of all. Not everyone who feels something for you is meant to walk beside you. And the clarity to know the difference is one of the greatest forms of love you can give yourself. Aquarius, let everything slow down right here. After all the realizations, after the clarity and the choosing, what remains is not tension. It is space. A wide, gentle space where nothing needs to be forced anymore. You can finally breathe without waiting for something to happen. Yes, you stirred something in them. Something honest. Something alive. Something they could not ignore forever. But that does not make it yours to carry. There is a quiet wisdom that arrives with time. A knowing that not every awakening requires your continued presence. Not every connection is meant to be completed by you. Some are meant to be recognized and then released. This is not coldness. This is maturity. You are not here to rescue unfinished stories. You are not here to become the place where others finally decide to grow. You have already done your growing. Your role was never to heal them. It was to reflect something back to them that they had been avoiding in themselves. And once that reflection is seen, your responsibility ends. Aquarius, there is peace and understanding that being thought about is not the same as being chosen well. Someone can hold you in their mind while still being unable to hold you in their life. That does not diminish your worth. It clarifies it. At this stage of your journey, you no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You no longer confuse attention with alignment. You listen differently now. With your body. With your nervous system. With your sense of inner quiet. If something feels heavy, you notice. If something feels clear, you trust that too. This is the gift you earn through experience. Let me ask you something softly as the night settles around us. What would it feel like to stop managing outcomes and start honoring truth as it reveals itself naturally? Because truth does not need to be chased. It rises on its own. It shows up in consistency. In effort. In the way someone meets you without asking you to bend. And if that truth leads someone closer, you will feel it as ease. If it leads them away, you will feel that as relief, even if it comes with a quiet ache. Both outcomes are forms of alignment. You are not losing anything by letting things unfold. You are gaining yourself back every time you choose calm over craving. This is where your independence becomes sacred, not a shield, not a defense, but a home you have built inside yourself. From this place, you can welcome connection without depending on it. You can love without abandoning your center. And that is the kind of energy that attracts what is real and filters out what is not. As the story settles, there is nothing left for you to prove. Nothing left to wait for. Nothing left to fix. Only a quiet confidence that whatever belongs with you will not require you to step out of your truth to keep it. Stay with that feeling. Let it anchor you. Because the universe does not reward longing. It responds to alignment. And you, Aquarius, are exactly where you need to be to meet what is meant to stay. Aquarius, before you go, let me leave you with this. Nothing in this journey was random. Not the timing. Not the connection. Not even the silence that shaped you more than words ever could. If something in this story felt familiar, it's because it was meant to remind you of who you are now, not who you used to be. You don't need to be chosen to be valuable. You don't need answers to be at peace. And you don't need to chase clarity when your intuition has already spoken. There is a quiet strength in you that doesn't seek attention but commands respect. That strength is what shifted the energy. That presence is what lingered in someone's thoughts. Not because you tried, but because you were aligned. And alignment is magnetic. As this chapter settles, trust what feels calm. Trust what feels steady. Trust the version of you who no longer confuses intensity with truth. If you felt seen tonight, if your chest softened even a little, leave a comment and tell me what resonated. Your words matter here. This space is built for Aquarians who think deeply, feel quietly, and grow intentionally. If this message met you at the right moment, subscribe and stay close. There is more unfolding, more clarity coming. The next message is already forming. Most of all, trust yourself. The universe isn't asking you to wait, it's asking you to stay aligned. And from that place, everything that belongs with you will recognize you without being chased. Take this calm with you. Carry it into your next conversation, your next choice, your next beginning. The journey continues, and you are exactly where you need to be.